storm. 89 tomorrow with clouds, and then we get some afternoon and evening rain. Potentially, we could see some tropical downpours and winds on Thursday night into Friday morning as that tropical system makes its way through. But right now, we're sitting at overcast conditions, and it is 73 on 107.5 The Game.
Nine o'clock on your Tuesday morning. Welcome in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you here on The Game as we make our way through the week. Bye week here. Obviously, South Carolina sitting at 3-1 as we near the end of September. South Carolina, of course, won't play again until we get into the month of October, taking on Ole Miss here in a couple weeks. But really good time to kind of assess where everything sits as of right now. We're third of the way through the season now, with a pretty good sample size of everything that we've seen from South Carolina so far. But before we do that, of course, we have to kick things off with a little Sandstorm pick-me-up. It is time for your 9 a.m. Sandstorm Pick-Me-Up, brought to you by South Carolina's largest injury law firm, George Sink Injury Lawyers. If you've been hurt in the car or at work, call George Sink now at 803-ALL-9. Got to wait a couple weeks to hear Sandstorm back in Willie B. Again with Ole Miss coming to town next weekend, which you'll be able to watch them in action against probably their first competent opponent this upcoming weekend as they take on Kentucky. That game in Oxford, I believe noon kick on either ESPN or ABC. So you'll be able to get a good look at South Carolina's next opponent against the first viable team they faced. You know, they've been beating the Furmans and the Georgia Southerns, Wake Forest of the world, for the first 4 weeks of the season, which hasn't really told us a whole lot about about Ole Miss. But this weekend should be an opportunity to learn a little bit more about them before next week's matchup. But again, going back to South Carolina, sitting in a pretty good spot at 3-1, heading into the bye week with all the goals still ahead of you. As we've said, South Carolina, if you would have told most fans back in like July, hey, Carolina's going to be 3-1 at the end of September and with a 3-point loss to LSU. Now, without the context of knowing how that 3-point loss against LSU happened, I think everybody would have taken that, because we viewed the month of September as very doable, and splitting Kentucky and LSU, yeah, it sounded pretty good. Again, when you throw in the context of how the LSU game went down with the penalties and losing the North Sellers, you obviously feel like that's one that you let slip away or one that was taken from you, depending on how you look at it. But regardless, still in a very good spot. And the thing about this year especially, every week I feel like our opinion shifts on the teams left on South Carolina's schedule. But I think you look at the remainder of Carolina's schedule and feel pretty decent about it overall. The objective coming into the year at bare minimum was to get back to a bowl game. That is, South Carolina should be playing in a bowl game at the very least every single year. Last year it didn't happen. Again, you look at the Florida game, look at the Clemson game, and wonder what could have been if things go a little bit differently in those games. But, can't go back and change it. So you went 5-7 last year. setback. Obviously, a lot of frustration going in the offseason, and hope that this year is a better step in the right direction. Of course, in your next two games against Ole Miss and Alabama, you're not going to be favored. Those are two top 10 teams, two teams that are very likely to be in the college football playoff when it's all said and done, two teams that have not lost so far this season. Not saying they can't lose. And as we've seen in Beamer's tenure, they've knocked off top 10 teams before. As we've seen earlier on this year, in Alabama's case against South Florida, they shot themselves in the foot for the first 50 minutes of that game. And if South Florida would have been a little bit more competent on offense, they could have capitalized and maybe made something happen in the fourth quarter there. Didn't happen, obviously, but, no team is completely invincible, as we've seen throughout college football so far this year. I mean, Georgia just, got taken to the wire by Kentucky a couple weeks ago. So those games are going to be uphill battles. And, again, Carolina's not going to be favored in those games. I would say you're probably not going to be favored against Clemson either. Now, Clemson, the perception of Clemson has shifted quite a bit from week number one, where they got bludgeoned by Georgia. They've since blown out App State and NC State in the past 2 weeks. Now, I don't think either one of those teams is all that great, but still, people a little bit more high in Clemson than they were. And going on the road to the Upstate at the end of the year is going to be a daunting task. Again, Carolina won last time they went up there 2 years ago, but not going to be favored in that game, which I think is understandable at this point in time. But when you look at kind of the middle of Carolina's schedule, when you look at the Oklahoma game coming up at the end of October, that's one that prior to the season, a lot of people looked at as, oh man, going on the road to Norman, that's gonna be a tough game, and they're a team that won 10 games a year ago and all that kind of stuff. Like, man, it's gonna be a challenge. Now the perception's changed. Oklahoma is not as scary of a team as many people thought. Really good on defense, which, and it's Brent Venables' coach team. That's kind of understandable, but the Jackson Arnold experiment, and I'll get into more of that here in a couple minutes, is not going well, to say the least. So offensively, they don't really scare you all that much. And of course, South Carolina has a really good defense in their own right. So that game might end up being 6-3 for all we know. But I look at it right now, where we sit after a month, and say, yeah, that's a game that South Carolina could go and win. Will they be favored going in? Maybe not. I feel like that's definitely a game that is going to be, I don't know, maybe a 3-point edge for Oklahoma just because they're at home. If that game was in Columbia, South Carolina might be favored. So I don't want to say South Carolina goes in as an overwhelming favorite, but definitely a very winnable game here coming up in a little over a month from now. You look at the A&M game as well. A&M's another team that, again, has had Carolina's number more often than not. But when you look at them through the first month of the season, yeah, they blew out Florida, 2 weeks ago, but that's a really down Florida program, obviously. They survived Bowling Green this past weekend. Another MAC school giving the SEC problems, funny enough. Marcel Reed looks really good. Connor Wegman, we'll see what goes on with him, but I don't view them as a team that is completely dominant or unbeatable either. So that's a game that, again, if Carolina's not favored in that game, it wouldn't shock me. Maybe A&M's a 1 or 2 point favorite. Maybe Carolina is favored. I don't know. It definitely kind of falls into that toss-up category as of right now, but definitely one that I think is winnable for Carolina. Same thing with Missouri. Now, Missouri is a top 10 team. You cannot deny that, and that's where they're ranked in the AP poll. But what we've seen from them so far this year is not the same Missouri it seems to be from a year ago. Again, still a lot of talent on the team. God, Nate Noel ran for 200 yards against Vanderbilt this past weekend. Brady Cook, solid. Luther Burden, obviously, very good wide receiver. He's not exploded quite yet the way that people, I think, would expect him to against the quality of opponent, considering the quality of opponents that they have, they've played. And you get that game here. Now, the hang-up on that is, obviously, Missouri has had South Carolina's number, particularly in the Eli Drinkwitz era. That's just a team that South Carolina has not been able to get past when it comes to Eli Drinkwitz. So, again, they're probably going to be favored coming in here, but especially watching them this past weekend barely scrape by against Vanderbilt, I don't sit here and say, wow, that's definitely going to be a team that's going to come in here and dominate South Carolina. I don't think that's the case. I think South Carolina has a very good chance in that game, even if they don't go into that game favored. And I'm not saying Carolina's going to, win all three of the Oklahoma, A&M, and Missouri games. It's possible. But even if you don't, I think all those goals, as I've said, are still, still very much ahead of you in terms of at least getting yourself back to a bowl game. Because the other two games on the schedule that I haven't mentioned, Vandy and Wofford, I know Vandy's kind of shifted back and forth between good and bad. They lose to Georgia State on the road 2 weeks ago and then take Missouri to the limit last week, which I don't know if that's a case of maybe Vanderbilt's just that good or maybe Missouri's just not that good. But that's a game that Carolina is probably going to be favored in. You get the game. It is going to be on the road, which, that's a challenge if you consider going on the road to Nashville a challenge. But talent-wise, I still think South Carolina is a better team than Vanderbilt. And then Wofford, FCS team, South Carolina should be able to handle that. So you're looking right now at a team that could maybe touch 7, maybe even 8 wins if things go right. I feel pretty confident South Carolina is going to get back to a bowl game. What that combination of 3 or more wins is right now, I don't know. Again, it kind of laid out which games are kind of toss-ups and which ones Carolina should be favored in. And who knows, maybe they jump up there. Maybe they shock somebody. Maybe they shock an Ole Miss. Maybe they shock Clemson. Maybe they go on the road and surprise Alabama. I'm not betting on it, but nothing's impossible in the world of college football, certainly. I've been checking around the bowl projections. I do this every week because it's always interesting to see, where they think Carolina's going to go and if they think they're going to make a bowl game. And pretty much every major publication that I checked yesterday had South Carolina going to some bowl game. Action Network said the Liberty Bowl, 24/7 said the Gator Bowl, ESPN had the Vegas Bowl, CBS had the Gator Bowl. So, the destination at this point in time doesn't matter, though going to Las Vegas would be pretty darn cool, and I would love to sign up for a trip there on my own with the station to go see that game. But regardless, if you can get back to a bowl game, you've taken a step back in the right direction, and it will say, hey, what happened in 2023 was just kind of an anomaly. That's not really the norm of what to expect going forward. And again, based on what we've seen in the first month, especially with the defense playing the way it has, I know offense is still coming along. You still need to improve, and Sellers needs to continue to grow. But when you have defense like South Carolina's defense has played this year, you're going to have opportunities against just about everybody. I say just about everybody. Defense keep you in the game. And that is the hope that I'm hanging my hat on with the South Carolina team as the defense continues to play well and does enough, even with the offense coming along, to make most of these games competitive, which is something to be optimistic about as we trudge along through this through the season. I always check. Seth Emerson of The Athletic does a really good job covering all things college football, particularly when it comes to the SEC on his weekly vibe check. Last week, Carolina was 11th after losing to LSU. This week, he has them up to 9th. Of course, beating Akron, that's not really going to impress a lot of people across the board necessarily, but it's worth something. It does mention that, they're heading into bye week to, get things right, get readjusted, and get ready for the tough schedule ahead. Because October, as we talked about all offseason, is a bear. Again, the Oklahoma game looks a little more manageable, but taking on Ole Miss and Alabama, certainly not an easy task by any means. And hopefully Carolina, if nothing else, can look competitive in those games, even if they don't walk away with a victory. Oklahoma, getting back to the point there, is a team that's in a little bit of flux right now because they, as well as several other teams around the SEC, have a bit of a quarterback controversy going on. More than we thought there was going to be before the season started. We'll dive into SEC quarterback problems coming up. It is The Extra Point. It's how I head along with you on your Tuesday here on The Game. Welcome back into the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you here on your Tuesday morning on the game. Of course, it is South Carolina's bye week, so we don't have an opponent to look ahead to this weekend. So good time to take a little broader look around what's happening in the SEC. And I go back to the summertime. I remember talking about this in June or July, and there was a bit of an oddity in the SEC that we don't typically see, where there wasn't really a lot of quarterback competitions going on heading into fall camp. For the most part, everybody, all 16 teams, kind of knew who their starting quarterback was going to be well ahead of the season. The closest thing to a battle was really what was happening at South Carolina. And you know, from a broader sense, people didn't know that Lenore Sellers was definitely going to be the starter. We, of course, knew that locally here. So really, everybody across the SEC didn't really have any questions about who their signal caller was going to be this season. We're now right at a month into the year, or excuse me, a month into the 24 season, and there's a lot of teams around the SEC that have changed that perception quite a bit, that are kind of hitting the panic button right now because their original plan at starter is not working out. I mentioned Oklahoma a little bit in that first segment there, looking ahead to the game that Carolina has coming up on the road in Norman here in a couple of weeks. And, you know, we have talked about that game a lot in the offseason with the perception of, man, here comes Jackson Arnold. He's a highly touted, now redshirt freshman that was handed the keys to the kingdom and is expected to be a superstar out there in Norman. Well, news coming out yesterday, he's not even starting this weekend against Auburn. Jackson Arnold has had a rough start to the season, to say the least. And let's remember here, they essentially told Dylan Gabriel last year, hey, bud, appreciate what you've done out here in Norman. We're going to need you to go somewhere else. Jackson Arnold's the future. We're going to build around him for the next 3 or 4 years. Good luck. And Dylan Gabriel's obviously gone on to play at Oregon. Well, Jackson Arnold has not done a whole lot in the first 4 games as a starter, even 5 games if you go back to his bowl game last year for Oklahoma, where he threw 3 interceptions, by the way, against Arizona. Through 4 games this season, not the most impressive stats. Yeah, week number 1 against Temple, he threw 4 touchdowns, but they weren't super impressed with the overall offensive performance there, and it's just been really shaky. And going back to this past weekend against Tennessee, he completed under 50% of his passes, 7 of 16 for 54 yards through an interception. Like, he just clearly does not look good. Now, it's not all on him. He has a very bad offensive line. He's been sacked 10 times through 4 games this season. He doesn't have a ton of time to throw. We've seen that plenty here at South Carolina. We can sympathize with that and understand that. That being said, though, towards the end of the game last week, Brent Venables makes the decision that he's going to make a change at quarterback, brings in Michael Hawkins, playing with the same offensive line. He proceeds to lead the team down the field for a couple touchdowns, 1 touchdown. He goes 11 of 18 for 132 yards. So it's very clear that he came in there and played a little bit better. Now, again, was Tennessee game planning for him? No. So the fact that, they bring in a quarterback they weren't expecting may have had something to do with that. But based on the eye test alone, it was very clear that Michael Hawkins did a better job than Jackson Arnold did. He's going to get started this weekend against Auburn. Now, he could go out there and play like crap against Auburn, and then they're back to starting Jackson Arnold again. But it goes back to the point. They thought they had their guy. They thought they had their superstar for the next handful of years. That was going to be, Heisman Trophy contender, possible draft pick in a couple years. And right now it doesn't look like that. So the panic button's starting to get hit a little bit out there in Norman, Oklahoma. But perhaps nobody's hitting the panic button more than the folks on the plains out there in Auburn, as their quarterback situation has been a mess, to say the least. You had Peyton Thorne to start the year, coming off of a pretty dismal 2023. Didn't go well. Threw a bunch of interceptions. They start Hank Brown 2 weeks ago against New Mexico. Looks good in that game, and then proceeds to throw a bunch of interceptions last weekend against Arkansas, bringing Peyton Thorne, who also throws some interceptions as well, because why not? And they proceed to lose the game 24-14. Here's Hugh Freeze yesterday talking to the media, assessing his frustrations on what he needs to do to fix the quarterback issue.
Always confident. But I hadn't met with the quarterbacks yet, and just kind of hear them talk me through, the decision that was made, and see if we did an adequate job of preparing them for that given play, or if it's just something they saw, or just a poor decision. We've got to figure out all of that, and if we haven't coached them well enough on that given play for the coverage that was given on it, that's something we've got to look at ourselves about. If they can explain it totally in detail, then we got to expect better from them also. So it's kind of a combination of things that we'll have to find out when we go through it with them.
Doesn't sound like a lot of answers right now, and he was not committed on any quarterback in particular. We're talking to the media yesterday. Again, they got Oklahoma this upcoming weekend. Very good defense. As bad as Oklahoma's offense is, their defense is great, which saw this past weekend, keep a high-flying Tennessee offense, to a moderate 25 points. So if I'm Hugh Freeze looking at this weekend, choosing between Peyton Thorne and, Hank Brown, I don't have a lot of optimism for what they're going to be able to do against a very good Oklahoma defense. So the panic button maybe getting hit a little bit more out there in Auburn, as they have more tough games to come. Georgia, Alabama, obviously. Things aren't looking too bright for old Hugh Freeze in year number 2 out there on the Plains. Florida, of course, is an ongoing quarterback battle. Graham Mertz, who, the completion percentage is phenomenal, one of the best in all of college football last year, but his playmaking ability has just not been there. Now, this past weekend, again, with the flip-flopping of quarterbacks, they did great. 45 points against a very bad Mississippi State team. Graham Mertz had 201 yards, 3 touchdowns. Lagway was perfect, 7 for 7 for 76 yards, and ran for a couple yards as well. But that's Mississippi State. That's not really a gauge of how good or bad these guys are. I think it's a better implication was what we saw 2 weeks ago against A&M, which was very poor in flip-flopping these guys. And it's a classic case. If you have 2 quarterbacks, you don't have one. And I still don't understand Billy Napier's strategy of designating Lagway be in every third drive. Like, if you're going to flip-flop quarterbacks, okay, but do it based on feel. Like, if Mertz goes out there and he has 2 good drives, we'll bring him out there for the third drive. If Lagway has a great drive, we'll bring him out there for the next one. Like, I don't like the idea of, presetting which drives these guys are going to be on. It should be based on a feel kind of thing. But regardless, neither one of these guys has done enough to lock down the starting job once again. And again, Mertz's completion percentage is phenomenal. People point to that as well. It should continue to be his job. But again, I haven't seen enough out of him outside of just completing passes to give me hope or optimism that he's going to suddenly make this offense be more dynamic going forward. And by the way, we've talked plenty about how tough their schedule is in the offseason. They're sitting at, 2-2 right now, with wins against very beatable Sanford and Mississippi State teams. UCF this weekend, a team that should be ranked right now in the AP poll. Tennessee, Georgia coming down the pipe, at Texas, Ole Miss, LSU, Florida State. I don't see too many more wins on the dock for Florida, as I imagine they'll continue to flip-flop quarterbacks there. So the panic button also getting hit pretty hard down there in Gainesville. And lastly, not that we expect a lot of them this season, but Blake Shapen went down with a shoulder injury this past weekend in the game against Florida for Mississippi State, and he's done for the season. Again, he transfers over from Baylor, a guy that was, kind of brought in to run that air raid type of offense that, Mississippi State was running under Mike Leach and is now running once again with Jeff Lebby. So he's out for the year. Michael Van Buren is stepping in as a true freshman now to kind of carry them the rest of the way. I don't expect a lot out of Mississippi State this year, but again, they had what they hoped to be their quarterback for the season now done for the year, unfortunately. So that's just kind of a lay of the land of where some of the teams concerned with their quarterbacks are as of right now. And again, Carolina, of course, had Lenore Sellers sitting out this past weekend more for precautionary than anything else. It sounds like he was healthy enough to go, but they decided to hold him out, which was smart. And hopefully he can stay healthy going forward because, of course, he gives South Carolina the best chance to win when he is in there at quarterback. Though Robbie Ashford did have a nice performance this past weekend against Akron, but tough challenges coming down the road, and we want Lenore Sellers to be calling the signals for South Carolina to hopefully, again, give them that best opportunity and continue to improve on offense as he is only, 3 games in as a starter right now, excuse me. So hopefully that continues to improve as the season goes along. Speaking of which, coming up next Saturday when they do take on Ole Miss, $500 will be up for grabs, and the Lawyer Lisa Special Teams Touchdown Contest is, again, $100 added to the pot each and every week for South Carolina. If a Special Teams touchdown gets scored, you can be the lucky recipient of all that money. Just go online to 1075thegame.com, click on the Lawyer Lisa Special Teams Touchdown Contest, and register for your chance to win whenever that Special Teams touchdown does indeed end up happening. It's Tuesday, time for some NFL Top 5, Bottom 5, as we've concluded week 3 of the NFL season with a couple Monday Nighters last night. We'll dive into that coming up. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you on your Tuesday here on The Game.
Looking off to the left, rolling that way, and flips it for a touchdown. Ty Johnson joins the party. 5 first-half scores by 5 different Bills. It's an avalanche.
Welcome back in. It is the Extra Points Hour ahead along with you here on your Tuesday on the game. That was the call last night on ESPN. Josh Allen, his 4th first-half touchdown for the Buffalo Bills en route to a dominating performance as they took down the Jacksonville Jaguars 47-10 in Game 1 of Monday Night Football. And Josh Allen will get our heavy lifting award brought to you by our friends over at TEC Equipment Rentals on what's been a great start to the season for him and the Bills. 7 touchdowns, no interceptions as of right now, and he's also rushed for 2 more scores as the Bills improve to 3-0. And no surprise, they will find their way into my NFL Top 5, Bottom 5 for this week. And by the way, if you've never listened to the NFL Top 5, Bottom 5 on this show, it is not scientific. It's just based off 5. So if you have a different opinion on who should be in the top 5 or the bottom 5, that's fine. You can let me know on the Firehouse Subs text line 803-404-6100. It's just, a stream of consciousness, I guess, based on my observations of the most recent week of the NFL season. And we got to start off with number 1. Didn't think I'd be saying this before the season started. How about the Minnesota Vikings? Sam Darnold rejuvenating his career, perhaps? They have the second best point differential in the league at plus 55 as of right now. Darnold and Justin Jefferson have a phenomenal chemistry connecting through the air. They have the best pass rush in all of the NFL right now with 16 sacks coming mainly from their linebacking core. Like, they are playing lights out football. Remember, J.J. McCarthy got hurt before the season started, and it was doom and gloom. Oh, no, we got to turn to Sam Darnold now for our hope this year. Yeah, they're 3-0. Didn't see that coming. Hats off to Sam Darnold. Maybe playing in places like, Carolina and the New York Jets just weren't good places for him, and maybe he is actually pretty decent after all. So they're number 1 as of right now in my NFL Top 5, Bottom 5. Kansas City proved to 3-0. They'll be number 2 on my list. After beating the Falcons on Sunday Night Football, they could easily be 0-3, which is hilarious, right? They are 27th in yards per game allowed at 361 yards, but they keep finding a way to win despite not playing their best football. Like, has Patrick Mahomes in any of the 3 games this year just completely took over and looked like, superstar Patrick Mahomes? Not really. I mean, their pass game hasn't lit up, the scoreboard. Isaiah Pacheco's injured. They're turning Carson Steele and, Samaje Perine now in their backfield. But, their offense hasn't, wowed you so far this year. But they're still finding a way to win. They're playing their best football in the fourth quarter when it really comes down to brass tacks. But, yes, if Isaiah Likely's toes inbound at the end of the game against the Ravens, that goes to overtime. Who knows what happens there? If things go differently at the end of the game against Cincinnati, they could have lost that one. And if Kyle Pitts would have been called, if the pass interference against Kyle Pitts would have been called, Falcons may have had a touchdown. And if they had a better 4th down call late in the game instead of going horizontal, who knows what happens there. But Kansas City's come so close to losing, but they haven't. And that's the mark of a good organization. One that, despite not playing the best football, despite not looking like the best version of themselves, is still finding a way to win. And when you have Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, you can never count them out. And they're 3-0 3 weeks through the season so far. Buffalo, as I mentioned last night, cruised to a very easy victory over the struggling Jacksonville Jaguars. They'll find their way into the bottom 5 here in just a moment. Don't worry about that. They're firing on all cylinders right now, and they're limiting mistakes. As I mentioned, Josh Allen has not thrown an interception this year. They're playing really good defense. It's one thing to beat an opponent, but it's another thing to bludgeon an opponent like they did to Jacksonville last night. James Cook, very effective running back. Things are just going swimmingly up there in Buffalo as of right now, and looking like, once again, a team that should be a factor once you make it to the playoffs. Just can they get past the Kansas City when they get to the playoffs? They end up matching up with them once again is obviously going to be the biggest question there. Detroit, number 4 in my top 5. One of the best rush offenses in all of the NFL right now, with that combination of Montgomery and Gibbs, a great 1-2 punch. Goff has got to cut down on the interceptions. It's being a little bit frugal with giving the ball away as of right now. But overall, defense playing really well. Again, they were one of the stories of the NFL last year, one of the biggest stories of the NFL last year, and not only making the playoffs, but finally winning a playoff game for the first time in my lifetime, at least. And a lot of good sense and vibes around what's happening up there in Detroit a couple weeks through the season. This one might be controversial. I got Philadelphia at number 5 in my NFL top 5, bottom 5. 2-1 right now, could easily be 1-2 or 0-3. You go back to the fact that they had the Falcons game won last week and blew that one, let the Falcons run down the field and win that game. It looked like they weren't going to beat the Saints, save for a huge reception and run by Dallas Goedert late in that game, which about 170 yards for a tight end. Insane. Great game by him. Despite the fact that they're not playing their best football right now, and despite the fact that their head coach, Nick Sirianni, continues to put them in less than advantageous situations when it comes to his fourth down play calling, they're still finding a way to win. That's a very talented team. I know they fell apart at the end of last year, and they're not playing their absolute best as of right now, but they're still winning. They're sitting at 2-1 right now. And if Nick Sirianni can get out of his own way and stop going for fourth downs when it doesn't make sense, this team can continue to be one of the best in all of the NFL because they have the talent on the roster to do that. That's the NFL top 5. Again, Minnesota, Kansas City, Buffalo, Detroit, and Philadelphia. Now the bottom 5, where things are not so bright and cheery. Denver, I will give them the credit. Picking up a win this past weekend. Defense has played pretty well so far, only allowing about 15 points per game. Offense is an issue. Look, when you bring in Bo Nix as a rookie quarterback, there's going to be growing pains. But when you're 3 weeks into the season and he hasn't thrown a touchdown pass and instead has thrown 4 interceptions, doesn't give you a lot of hope that it's suddenly going to turn into this offensive onslaught. They're also struggling to run the football as well. So they clock in for me at 28th as of right now. Last night, Jacksonville, again, getting absolutely skull-drugged by Buffalo, 47-10. Sitting 29th right now, so they'd be second in my bottom 5. Trevor Lawrence, remember that big contract he got in the offseason? Yeah, he's done not a whole lot so far this season. I get it. Every quarterback's, not playing their best football right now, but, man, Trevor Lawrence just is not looking like the guy a couple weeks into the season so far. Offense is poor. Defense is poor. Doug Peterson's seat starting to get a little bit warm down there in Jacksonville. 2 9-8 seasons. I know they made the playoffs a couple years ago, but the folks down there within the Jaguars fan base seem to be getting a little bit impatient with what's going on as of right now. Number 30, third in the bottom 5. New England. They have the worst offense in the league. Ramondre Stevenson is their only redeeming quality at running back. As you saw this past week on Thursday night against the Jets, when you hold him in check, they cannot do anything. Drake May, who they took a high draft pick with, is not ready yet. Jacoby Brissett, you're only going to have so much success with him as a quarterback. Defense is not bad necessarily, but you can't win without offense in this league. And they don't have any offense as of right now. Bottom 2, 31st, Tennessee. Will Levis is bad. Just plain and simple. No optimism in the quarterback room for the Tennessee Titans right now. 29th overall in offense. Top 5 in defensive yards allowed, and one of the worst points per games in all of the NFL. Offense continues to turn the ball over in the short field, which is leading to easy scores for their opponents. And again, Will Levis is showing me nothing to think that this team is going to turn it around and get any better as the season goes along. And lastly, of course, and hey, credit to them, they did finally win. They beat the Raiders, it's the Raiders. It's can only say so much about them. Carolina's still 32 for me. Yes, Andy Dalton is the quarterback now, who's better than Bryce Young. No shock there. They did pick up the win, but that's not sustainable to me. Andy Dalton's shown us plenty of times in his career. He can have one good week. He can have plenty of bad weeks. I don't see them suddenly turning into a 5 or 6 win team just because Andy Dalton is the quarterback now. Again, congratulations on the win against Las Vegas, but this is still a ton of organizational problems with that team, starting with the owner and heading on down. And feel good about the win this past weekend, but I'm not expecting too many more out of Carolina this year, which is why they are still my dead last team in the NFL top 5, bottom 5. We'll come back and wrap up today's edition of The Extra Point. A lot of news with Pac-12 as realignment continues to happen. I thought we were done with this, but apparently not. We are looking into what's happening with Pac-12 and some tickets to give away for Ole Miss coming up next weekend. That is The Extra Point rolls along. That's right. We got tickets. Next Saturday's matchup between South Carolina and Ole Miss. Caller number 5 right now, 803-404-6100. Win yourself that pair of tickets. Terry Ford anxiously standing by to take that phone call. Again, caller number 5 right now at 803-404-6100. As we learned yesterday, that game is going to be a 3:30 kick, which will be televised on ESPN. I know a lot of people were hoping for a night game, but 3:30 still pretty solid. I think that's plenty of time for people to get good and sauced up tailgating, for it to be a very rowdy atmosphere, maybe even better than what we saw this past weekend, or excuse me, 2 weeks ago, against LSU, as there's obviously the Juice Wells aspect of that game that is going to have people nice and riled up and plenty ready to leverage some booze whenever he's on the field in that game coming out next weekend. So congratulations to whoever ends up winning the tickets there. Realignment news is always present in college football and college sports. It never seems to go away. And we are getting more in reference to the Pac-12 maybe not being dead just yet. Of course, it was a couple weeks ago that we learned that Boise State, Colorado State, Fresno State, and San Diego State are going to be joining the conference in 2026 to get them up to 6 members. Of course, Oregon State, Washington State, the remaining 2 from the original Pac-12. But the caveat with the NCAA is you have a grace period, but you eventually have to get yourself back to 8 total members. So after getting these 4 schools, the Pac-12 once again went out and started trying to recruit other schools to come. And a couple schools that they were looking at were Memphis, Tulane, USF, and UTSA out of the American Athletic Conference. Now, they were trying to lure them in with a promise of about $12 million annually based on their proposed TV contract that would be coming down the line. That wasn't guaranteed, though. And when you looked at what those four schools were making in the American Athletic Conference, which is about $9 million, they weren't willing to leave for something that was not guaranteed. And yesterday, all 4 of those schools put out their confirmation that they are committed to staying with the American Athletic Conference and saying no to the Pac-12. So the Pac-12 had to go back to the drawing board yesterday and try and pull in some other members. That's where Utah State last night agreed to become the 7th member of the rebuilding Pac-12, which will be in 2026 as well. So that means one more team. They just need one more team program, to join as a full member. Now, what Gonzaga is going to join as Oregon State, Washington State are going to join as basketball members of the West Coast Conference. So I don't know how that's going to work with as far as when 2026 rolls around, but they're still looking for one more full-time member by 2026 to get them to that 8 number so they can continue to stay at conference going forward. Because again, the NCAA will not allow you to exist at under 8 for a prolonged period of time. UNLV is the rumored 8th team as of right now. They are exploring those options, and we'll see if they end up committing to that. The funny thing about this is they're essentially just absorbing the Mountain West, right? When the Pac-12 went away and all those schools went to join the Big Ten, the Big 12, Oregon State and Washington State were left behind. And, they struck up the scheduling deal with the Mountain West to be a quasi-member of the conference without actually being a member of the conference. And the thought was, well, hey, at some point, why don't you just merge 2 conferences and call it the Pac-12? Well, they're kind of doing that in a roundabout way, but it's kind of sucking the life out of the Mountain West, because if UNLV ends up going, that would leave the Mountain West with 6 members, to where then they're no longer suitable to being a conference, and they got to go out and start trying to poach teams to try and bring their numbers back up. So it's kind of a weird dynamic where it's like, well, if you just merge and call yourself the Pac-12, then everybody would be satisfied, right? Now, I'm sure there's a lot of legal red tape that gets in the way of doing that necessarily, which is why they're going about it the way they're going. And these schools that are leaving the Mountain West do have to pay an exit fee, which is pretty hefty. So all that being said, I get the Pac-12 trying to maintain its relevance, but this is not going to be viewed as a power league. We've already gotten to saying the phrase Power 4, right? Because a league consisting of Oregon State, Washington State, Boise, Colorado State, Fresno State, San Diego State, Utah State, and UNLV, nobody's looking at that as a power conference. it's still going to be viewed as what I guess technically now is group of 6, right? Where, yeah, you can still get into the playoff via the open spot for a non-power conference champion while that still exists as of right now. But this isn't going to suddenly make the Pac-12 a Power 5 conference again. And I feel bad for Oregon State and Washington State because they got left behind because they're in 2 media markets that aren't as desirable as, you know, the Eugene Oregons and the Seattle Washingtons and the LAs, obviously. But this isn't going to suddenly make them one of the more respected conferences again. They're going to be fighting right alongside the Sun Belt and the AAC and, you know, Conference USA and Mountain West and all that kind of stuff with trying to be that one conference that can get somebody in the college football playoff. So there's your latest realignment news. Again, UNLV, potentially the next option for the Pac-12 to get to that coveted 8th member. That'll do it for today's edition of The Extra Point. Coming up next, it is the Gamecock Club Hour with guest from Gamecock men's basketball, Miles Stute, sitting down with Chris Clark for a few minutes. That's coming up next on your Tuesday here on The Game.
All right, welcome in. It's the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. Chris Clark. Going to try to steer this ship here, but I'm joined by a special guest. It's Miles Stute from Gamecock Basketball. Hey, Miles, appreciate you being in with me today, man. Not your first time here on the program.
No,
so how are things going?
Things are going great. I appreciate you having me here on the show today. But yeah, like I said, things are going great. I'm really excited about the state of South Carolina basketball. Not only excited, but confident. I think we've, done a lot of good work so far in the preseason. So I'm excited for us. Yeah,
good stuff, man. Start right off the bat here. We,
yes, sir.
Last week, I think it was, we got to chat with one of your new teammates, Nick Pringle. Impressive guy.
No doubt.
Knew a lot about him as a player. Watched him when he was at Bama, was familiar that when he was at Wofford, but man, he's just a good kid too. He's a lot of fun to be around.
Yeah, no question. Like you said, a lot of fun to be around. Definitely got a lot of lively personality to him, and just fun to be around as a teammate. That's the kind of guy you love to have on the floor around you. Just being able to be comfortable around, not only him but guys like that. I think the team chemistry has been really, really good so far, and just natural.
Yeah, for sure. That's where I was going to go next. So you led us right in that direction. We're probably not going to talk about a lot of like how's practice going, on court stuff. Like I want to dive a little bit more into, just the team chemistry and community and local stuff, all that kind of stuff. But how is it with having some of these new guys, whether it's young players, whether it's transfers like Nick, integrate into the program this year?
Yeah, like you said, it's a couple of new faces in the program this year. But to be honest with you, man, it doesn't feel like it. It's been really easy and free-flowing transition for the new guys, I feel like, whether they've been freshmen or transfers. Even on the court as well, I think, it's been a really, really good look. And we all kind of fit together on the court and off the court, per se. I think our personalities just really, really mixed together. And these are guys that, we just genuinely love to be around and enjoy each other's company. So it's really nice to just have a group like this. I can kind of compare it to last year a little bit, and just how far and how fast we've come along together so far throughout the young season. But it's just been lovely, man, to just witness it and be a part of it so far, man. I've enjoyed every second of it.
Yeah, the other thing, one of those newer faces who's a freshman, but man, doesn't really seem like it is, Cam Scott just seems mature beyond his years. I definitely wasn't like that when I was in college, as a freshman especially.
For sure. I know my first year coming in, I wasn't, as bright as him, and just, things that he's been able to pick up on so far are just a testament to his work ethic and all the hours that he puts in, not only in the gym, but watching film and doing all the things that I know he does off the court as well. So, yeah, I'm excited for everybody to see him in a South Carolina Gamecock uniform, man. It's going to be a blast this year.
So, Miles, it's obviously, the year 2024. And so what that means is, man, you have a lot of player movement, and you actually came, obviously, here to South Carolina via the portal from Vanderbilt, yes, where you were before. And I think every year you just kind of look at this thing and go, you never fully know what a roster is going to look like, So
right.
Just individually, obviously, you had another year. So this offseason, you could have done a variety of things. You could have said, hey, I'm going to go try my hand at the pros. I'm going to stay at South Carolina. I'm going to move on, right? Because players have that option now. So
no doubt.
You're here. Why is South Carolina still the place for you?
Excited to be here. I not only do I believe in these guys and this team, but I believe in the vision that Coach Paris has for these guys and for myself as well. That was definitely just the point that brought me back, coming off of the heels of last year, doing things that this program hasn't seen in a while. And just being kind of one of those key cogs on a team last year, being able to come into this year and into more of a leadership role and understanding just that, like I said, this is my last year in college, really. So it's time to just leave everything that I got out there, and I felt it was no better place than to come back and run it back and do it here. So, yeah, man, I feel like just excited isn't even the word that I have for this team and for this season. I think, we're going to continue to build on what we did last year with that run in the tournament, and just, do exactly what we know we can do.
You know, I don't know why this just came to mind, man, but I guess I was thinking about you being from up in the D.C. area.
Yes, sir.
And I feel like last time you came in studio with us, I don't remember the timeline on that, but so I don't know if Carolina had Dylan Stewart committed or not, but do you know Dylan Stewart from the football team, or had you heard of him?
For sure, heard of him. I don't know him personally, you know, but definitely seen him around, dapped him up a couple times, said what's up to him. That guy's a freaking nature, man. just seeing him play and then being in the stands, kind of watching the team. It's a really, really good team that they put together this year with Coach Shane Beamer. Just hats off to the work that they've done so far. But like you said, that kid Dylan Stewart, man, he's nuts.
Yeah, it's crazy what he's done as a freshman. Some of the things that he can do in year one, and he's kind of still a baby, you know, when you really think about it that way.
Yeah.
Do you watch a lot of the football? I mean, obviously you keep up, I can tell, but do you watch a lot of the games, or what's your?
Oh, yeah. No, for sure. I've watched every game this year so far, man.
Oh, there you go.
This past game, Saturday versus Akron, was a great game. Definitely a great bounce back game. You know, it was a tough one. Last one against LSU, I thought we had that one for sure, 100%. But it is what it is. You know, just continue to build on it. But yeah, no, this is a great team.
Did you get to go to Williams-Brice Stadium, watch the game, or are you more of a home watcher, or how do you take in the games?
Yeah, no, I love to come to Williams-Brice Stadium and be there in person and experience it live, man. The crowd has been nuts every single time.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go next, man. Like, you look up in the Akron game, and you know, you look in kind of the corners and they're full, you know, for the Akron game. So just wanted to get your take on what you've seen, not only for football, but obviously for your sport, for basketball, from a fan support perspective.
I was going to say, it's nuts. I don't mean to cut you off, but I love our fans personally, man. Like, our fans just give me so much juice, especially being on the court and hearing their roar, and you know, hearing the sandstorm and seeing all the towels waving. Just it turns me up and it gets me going for sure. So also witness that on the football field on a little bit more of a larger kind of scale. Like you said, looking up in the corners of the stadium, seeing them filled up and everybody's there jumping, roaring. It's third, fourth quarter. Everybody's still there. It's packed and it's lively. It does so much for you as a player to know that the support is there and that whole stadium has your back, man. No doubt about it. So I love our fans. I can't say enough about them.
Now, I know you guys have been doing some pretty cool stuff. So you're here on behalf of the Gamecock Club, obviously. So what's it been just doing some things for them? I know some members of the team have done events and autograph signings. Obviously, you're doing this show, which is awesome and which we appreciate. But how's it been working with the Gamecock Club and getting to get out and meet some of the fans and things like that in these events?
Yeah, no, it's been awesome. It's been a joy to be a part of the Gamecock Club, and I'm so thankful to have the opportunity to do so. Like you said, just having the opportunity to have a couple autograph signings and kind of interact with the fans a little bit, take pictures here and there, be at a couple of tailgates for these past couple games, and you know, interact with the fans a little bit, get out there and just, you know, show my face and show them some love, because they show us so much love. And so just anytime I'm able to go out there and show them that I appreciate it, I jump on that chance. So it's been a joy to be a part of the Gamecock Club.
From a community standpoint, Miles, I know that's something that, you know, y'all have done a good bit with as well, the basketball program. So not just Gamecock fans, but kind of just getting out in the community. Any updates that you can share with us there on, you know, some things that y'all have done since last time we talked to you, the last several months, last year or so?
No, for sure. Yeah, personally, just even in this off season and preseason, being able to get out into the community and go to a couple middle schools and interact with the kids, do things like giveaways, you know, give them some book bags and materials and books, stuff like that, whatever they need for school. And also just, like I said, interacting with them. We were able to do this event where we were kind of drawing with the kids and you know, tapping into their artistry, and it was beautiful to see some of the pieces that they came up with in that short period of time. But you know, it's lovely anytime that we get out and get a chance to interact with the community and do things, you know, like I said, giveaways and just whatever it is, having our hands on the community and our feet on the floor, feet on the ground. It's a joy. So yeah.
For sure, man. All right, well, we got a lot more to get into, Miles, on the other side. We do have to take a quick time out here, but when we come back, got some more questions about just your experience in Columbia here so far and kind of looking ahead as well. So take a quick break here on the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. I'm Chris Clark. He's Miles Studi. You're listening to The Game. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back in, everyone. Chris Clark here in studio with South Carolina Gamecocks basketball senior Miles Stute. Again, Gamecock Club Hour is presented all the time by Krantz Cooling and Heating. Appreciate the Gamecock Club. Appreciate Krantz Cooling and Heating for presenting us with this opportunity to chat with Gamecock student athletes, which is really awesome. Miles, let's look back a little bit and not really like on the court, well, this is what we did schematically or something like that. But, you know, y'all had such a huge turnaround from the previous season. You, BJ Mack, Talon, you know, everybody else who's on the roster obviously played a role in it. But just from like a culture standpoint, what do you think Lamont Paris did and what did you guys do to help turn that thing around?
I think Coach, first and foremost, he did a lot for us last year. Just the systems that he implemented and the way that he coached us last year. He showed us how to embrace each other in the toughest moments. You know what I mean? Like when adversity comes and our backs are against the wall and our true character comes out and our, you know, the things that we've been working on all summer, all winter in the gym together comes out. What does it look like? And so just, you know, being able to experience that myself and kind of be also a leader amongst that group was amazing. It was a joy to not only, you know, like you said, turn things around for the program and do what we did, but to just like, oh man, I can't even put it into words. It's really crazy. Just all the moments, you know, all the games that we played in together were so fun from the start to finish. You know, like we really just truly had fun together. That was always a point of emphasis to us. Like it's going to be hard. There's going to be times where we're on the road and, you know, we're getting booed and nobody wants to see us win. But as long as we're only worried about those guys in the locker room and that those 15 guys, that's all that mattered to us. So we embrace each other and we try to just make the game fun for each other at the end of the day, celebrate each other. You know, that someone gets a dunk and you look at the bench, everybody's standing up and clapping and cheering. Somebody hits a big shot, we're dapping each other up and we're trying to get a stop on defense. We're talking, we're loud. It's those little things that really make a team, you know, go far in this game of basketball. So we were able to kind of check all those boxes, just like Coach LP showed us how to do.
You know, when you look at, you follow like college basketball, college football, and this is just me, man, just me talking. You might not agree, but there are some teams, coaches of teams that you look at in sports and you're like, man, that dude is a great coach. But I don't really know if I'd want to play for him, you know, type of thing, right? And then there are other coaches that have a lot of success, and you're like, that dude seems like he'd be awesome to play for. To me, when I watch Lamont's coaching style and take South Carolina out of it, it's like, man, Lamont seems like a really good coach, but also a lot of fun and a good guy to play for, right?
100%. Like I want to say I can almost quote him on this. Like every time in practice, he tells us like once the ball goes up in the air and they tip it, like this is on you guys. Like I'm just on the sidelines. There's not much I can do at that point. I'm really just out there, just, you know, just cheering you guys on and celebrating what you guys do and correcting a few things here and there and making sure you guys are tight. But other than that, it's on y'all. So, you know, when a coach kind of gives you that freedom and just allows you to, you know, just be out there to have fun and do your thing and make sure you're playing defense hard. And on the other end, you know, just make sure you get a good shot at the end of the day. It allows you to just go out there with no worries and you're almost just carefree, you know, having fun.
I know that you have played in systems where things are, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you've played in systems where things are a little more rigid, right? Where like more structure versus what you described with Lamont, where it's free. Like, so if you decide to coach one day, first of all, do you even want to do that? Do you have any interest in coaching?
For sure. Okay. I'd love to coach one day down the line for sure. If
you ended up being a coach, what are you running? Like, what's your style, you think?
I think for me, at the end of the day, it would depend on my personnel. I think when it just really comes down to your players, like, are they capable, of being in a free flowing offense and being able to play off of reaction and just being able to play off of each other, or do they need a little more structure? Do they need a little more set plays here and there to get guys shots or situations, stuff like that. So I think at the end of the day, it would come down to my players for me as a coach. But I would prefer to play in a free flowing offense for sure, 100%, just because I think that's the way that the game of basketball is supposed to be played. Just playing off of your other four guys, reading and reacting to each other. Just playing off of instincts. I think that's the best way to play, and I love to play that way. So,
a former Gamecock who is now a coach up in your area, who knows you well. We had on Trey Kelly a while back.
Yes, sir, my guy.
He had a lot of great things to say about you, of course. But how's it been just knowing Trey, and what kind of influence has he been on you?
Man, he's been like a mentor, like a big brother to me ever since I really got into college, especially that last year at Gonzaga that I had played. Me and him really locked in and worked out together. He worked me out almost every day during the COVID pandemic. And so just being able to get so many different things from him, so much knowledge instilled within me, so many different drills and just ways to approach the game that he allowed me to see. It's just things I can't put into words. I'm so grateful for the experience that I've had to know Trey Kelly and get to get closer to him. So it's been a joy.
Yeah, one of the most, in my opinion, man, one of the most underrated athletes that has come through here, and tough. I mean, he was tough as nails for sure too. So fun to watch him.
Sure.
Miles, going back to the team, we were talking earlier about team culture and things like that, and
yes,
a guy that's been very instrumental in the program since he's become a part of it, and heck, before he became part of the staff, obviously as a player and being around Kerry Rich. What have you seen out of Kerry and his influence on this program under Coach Paris?
He's like our unspoken hero. Honestly, like, Rich does so much for us behind the scenes, whether it's just during the games telling us what he's seeing and kind of giving us more of a player's perspective than a coach's perspective, telling us certain things that only he can tell us. It's a lot of help. He definitely does a lot for us, and man, I can't thank him enough, honestly, for the help that he's given me personally, and just the ways that he's coached me and kind of helped me adjust to our system. He's been instrumental to our program so far, for sure, in my personal experience here in South Carolina my past year.
So looking forward to this season, just individually.
Yes, sir.
Any goals that you have in mind of things that you've really honed in on this offseason?
Man, I truthfully, I just want to be a defensive menace. That's coming into next year. That's what I want to do. I really want Columbia to be a place where other teams come in and they just hate to play. I want them to come here and just dread that day. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I dream of in my mind. I envision just us being a defensive unit. So for me personally, that's really what I've honed in on this offseason, like just doing defensive drills, doing agility drills, lane slides, stuff like that, like things I've never done before to kind of condition myself and my body to be a tank out there on that end of the floor. So yeah, definitely that. And I think, like I said earlier a little bit, speaking on that that leadership piece, that's going to be a big goal for me, is just being somebody that these guys can rely on at the end of the day, somebody that's consistent, and that they can, ask questions about, whether it's offense, defense, off the court, whatever, you know what I mean? Just being there for these guys and helping them through this season, and being able to share my experience as I've been here for a couple years in college, you know what I mean? So definitely have a lot to share for these guys and a lot for them for me. But yeah, at the end of the day, as well, offensively, just making sure that I'm a sniper. That's what I want to be known as. Coming out this year is just being one of the best 3-point shooters in the country, if not the best. So that's definitely a big goal for me this year, and I'm looking forward to proving that. Not only just backing up those words.
For sure, man. So obviously, part of having opponents not enjoying playing in Columbia at Colonial Life Arena is the fans as well, which you shouted out earlier. So as we close things out here in this last couple minutes or so,
yes,
give your pitch. Gamecock fans are going to be excited, man, especially after last year, about coming out and watching this team. But for anybody who's like, Oh, I hadn't really watched the Gamecock basketball game, or I don't know. Give your little pitch to have the fans come out and watch y'all.
Yeah, yes, sir. Now, before the season starts, I want y'all to know it's going to be a really good one. Like, I'm excited. Like I said earlier, not only am I excited about this group, but I'm confident in this group. I think we have a lot of things to prove, and I think we got the right guys to do it. So with that being said, I'm looking forward to this season. I think we're going to do a lot of great things, and I think you guys should come and witness it. I think it's going to be a phenomenal season, and we need your energy. We need you guys roaring and throwing your white towels and jumping up and down while Sandstorm is playing and we're getting ready to tip off. Like we definitely need that energy, and so we appreciate it this last year, and we're looking forward to you being there at CLA this year.
All right, awesome stuff, Miles. Hey, I appreciate you, man. It's been Miles Studi from Gamecock Basketball here on the Gamecock Club Hour, presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. We'll be right back on the other side.
Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Heating and Cooling. Tyler Head and Chris Clark along with you. Appreciate Miles Studi for taking a little bit of his time. And I know, Chris, you could hardly contain your excitement being that you're the president of the Miles Studi fan club and everything.
I forgot to tell him about that, actually. Man, huge swing and a miss, missed opportunity, bricked layup, whatever, kind of metaphor you want to use there.
Well, fortunately, we only got, 40 more days, something like that. Maybe less than that until season tips off. They had their first day of practice yesterday, which I think you guys talked about a little bit there.
Yeah.
Man, it'll be here before we know it.
Good timing. Young Jack Veltri, who is in with you often, Tyler.
Right.
He has a roster breakdown on Gamecock Central, complete with a fancy graphic. This is a nice graphic, actually. Go check that out on GamecockCentral.com. He's got a few players on there, actually. Lamont Paris is in the middle. Cam Scott, Colin Murray Boyles, Jacoby Wright, Miles Studi, all featured on there. And Miles is going to be a very important player, I think, for this year. But you're right. The Colin Taylor honored countdown.
Yes.
We should name it after him because home opener's 41 days away.
Oh, I was almost dead on. That's cool.
Yeah, the regular season, of course, is North Florida, November 4th, Colonial Life Arena. So last time that the Gamecocks have made back-to-back NCAA tournaments, Tyler, 1997, 1998 seasons. And so Gamecocks have, very interesting this year, I think, because we're obviously in the midst of football season, but you start thinking, man, it's not that far away. You've got less than 2 months. Good time to start thinking about it. Practice ramping up. Last season's Gamecock basketball team went in nationally, regionally, very low expectations, right?
Famously last in the SEC,
That's right.
According to the media.
They like us. And locally, I think people were a little bit more excited. I think most people looked at it going, we're not going to finish last in the SEC. I don't think people envisioned what they ended up getting with the team having a chance at the end of the season to literally play to win the SEC.
Right.
And so I think that will adjust expectations. Look, the SEC is going to be, once again, a really good league, obviously.
By the way, you welcome in Texas now and Oklahoma, a program that, it can always be dangerous as well.
That's right. 2 teams that have been in the tournament plenty and have had a lot of great players. You welcome those guys in. That, of course, makes it more difficult on not just South Carolina, but everybody in the league. I think the expectations this year will be a bit more heightened in terms of national, regional. I don't think people are going to be out there picking, I think South Carolina will win the league. I don't expect a lot of that. Point is, the expectations is different than last season because they are going to be heightened going into this year. The good news is you don't look at the South Carolina team and say, well, it's kind of unreasonable. They're not going to be able to meet those. I like the way that Jack put it in his piece. Home opener's 41 days away, and you do have some excitement around the program buzzing because of the returners that you've got. You've got a Jacoby Wright. You've got a Zach Davis. You've got Miles Studi. But you're also bringing in some players, a Cam Scott, Jamari Thomas at guard, Jordan Butler, Nick Pringle. You've got a mix of returning guys who can still get better, still have some growing to do, especially like a CMB. Returning player, sophomore, at times when he was on the court last year, sometimes looked like the best player on the court. He's got opportunities to grow. You sprinkle in a Cam Scott as a freshman. You sprinkle in, a Nick Pringle, a Jordan Butler. Very intriguing team. I think it will be a different team than last year. You hear enough. Lamont Paris, I think, is going to, he's got his principles, of course, but I think he's going to craft this team around what their strengths are. You hear that all the time, but I think you're going to actually see that. It'll probably be different stylistically to kind of match those talents because this is as many of the guys that are coming back, you lose some guys that where you could see, hey, you're going to change your style. Meechie Johnson's gone, right? Stylistically, I think he could play a lot of different ways, but 2 guys to me, Tyler, that really illustrate big losses, but illustrate kind of the difference from last year, this year, B.J. Mack, Talon Cooper, both unique players. Talon, big guard, could shoot, could guard multiple positions, ran the offense great. You know, South Carolina liked to play things pretty slow most of the time. B.J. Mack's such an interesting player because, frankly, you're not going to find a lot of guys like him that can play the 5, step out and shoot the 3, right? His quote-unquote replacement, you know, maybe you replace him in the aggregate with a CMB who might shoot more this year and a Nick Pringle. Pringle, also a big man, very different type of guy, though, much more of an above-the-rim player. I kind of think we'll see this team run a little bit more this year as opposed to what we saw last season.
Yeah, definitely so. And we talked about this, you know, last year with the group that Lamont Paris had, where it was a lot more of a reflection of him and his personality. You obviously had Mac, you had Talon Cooper, 2 very senior-laden guys that were here. It's kind of the leaders of this team, and we're kind of looking at that as what like a Nick Pringle could bring in, given all of his experience in college basketball. And you look in somebody like Miles Studi, who is coming into his senior year, Jacoby Wright returning for another year. You have a lot of just very experienced senior-laden guys, in addition to the young guys, the CMBs, the Cam Scotts, those guys coming in, or CMB coming back for another year. That brings a lot of excitement. Zachary Davis also has been around the program for a while and obviously plays his role really, really well. So you have a lot of experience, and again, a lot of guys that just fit that same kind of personality that, you know, Lamont Paris has. And, you know, when you hear from somebody like Studi, when we've talked to Cam Scott, like it's almost like you're listening to Lamont Paris talk as a younger version of himself. You know what I mean? Like these guys are bought into what he's doing here, what this program is supposed to be. And, you know, that same kind of personality, which I think resonates and is a reason why they were having the success they had last year.
All the guys, you know, you think about the players on this roster last season, right? And you saw the growth. I mean, that was something that was really impressive about what Lamont Paris and his staff did is guys grew from year to year. You know, Jacoby Wright got better last year. You saw Mac, Talon Cooper, they had really good years. Colin Murray Boyles, as a freshman, came in and did some really good things. I think the staff deserves, you know, a lot of credit for that. So, you know, I think that's been a hallmark of what Paris has done. And last year's the best evidence of it is it's small sample size, sure, but they've developed players. And that's one reason why lots of times there's always a team in every sport every year, more than one team. You know, we say this a lot. Some teams are going to be about what you thought. Some teams are going to be better. Some teams are going to be worse. South Carolina took their expectations on the national stage. There weren't really any. Nobody's talking about South Carolina going into the season. Part of that was I think people just missed. Like sometimes when you bring in multiple transfers and it's not like, hey, we got 4 guys from Kansas and Kentucky. You know what I mean? Like where Cooper came from, where Matt came from. You're relying on a freshman in Murray Boyles. Like when you do that in the portal era, sometimes it's hard to get a sense of teams, you know, because you're doing the thing where you just look and say, where'd their transfers come from? Not blue bloods, okay, they'll probably just be okay. But they built the team the right way, had a lot of experience. Yeah, I mean, we're seeing that in South Carolina's defense in football. They bring back a lot of guys. They bring in experienced guys from the portal. They're a very veteran-laden team, and they have talent as well. Last year's team, Talon Cooper had played 3,000 games by the time he got here. B.J. Mack had been in college a long time. Like they had guys with lots of experience. And so I think part of it was people just kind of got it wrong as far as what should be expected. They probably should have been a little bit higher on them. But another thing is Paris just took this group and really developed them. You know, like you could see the individual growth from players, but you could also see their growth as a team and how he has them play.
And basketball is such a different sport compared to football, where, yes, if you're in football and you're getting transfers from Alabama and Ohio State and Texas and Georgia, yeah, those guys are probably going to end up being pretty good because the talent disparity between the top and the bottom, even in just FBS football alone, is, I'd say, pretty significant. But basketball is so different. And, yeah, like we look at a guy like Nick Pringle coming from one of the better basketball programs in Alabama that people are plenty excited for, but you should also be very excited about Jamari Thomas because similar to a Talon Cooper, despite the fact who's playing the mid-major, has played a lot of basketball, and that's valuable. And yeah, again, that talent gap between the mid-majors and the elite of the elite, the Kansases, the Dukes, and all that kind of stuff isn't that sizable. If you have somebody that has just been around the game for a long time and has been as big of a contributor as he was at his previous school at Norfolk State, like that's plenty of reason to be excited. Though, again, the school he's attached to or where he's coming from doesn't pop off the page at you necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, Jamari Thomas coming in here, he's played 3 seasons of basketball. He's played 92 games, and he started 53. And you can say, well, I was at Norfolk State. I mean, you know, if you took a team, that's another thing to say probably too often, if you took a team full of Norfolk State transfers, that's what you're going to look like ultimately.
Sure.
But you can sprinkle in some guys who are good enough. We see this in every sport, every level. They're guys that fall through the cracks, or they're guys that develop from what they were in high school and end up being high major players. So they've done that before at South Carolina with transitioning some guys from, you know, one level to another, or maybe just need Miles Studi. He was already an SEC player, just looking for something different. They've done a good job of mixing and matching that, and I think that's what we're going to have this year between a freshman like Cam Scott, some transfers that we've mentioned, and returning guys.
Speaking of basketball, because it is a bye week for South Carolina football, Coach Paris is going to be on Carolina Calls coming up tomorrow night, 6 p.m. with Derek Scott, which you can listen to right here on the game in Columbia and Myrtle Beach. We'll come back and wrap up today's edition of the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Crans Heating and Cooling. Take a look at the AP Top 25 that came out after week number 4 of the college football season. Tyler and Chris along with you on Tuesday here on the game. After the Sports Minute.
Kev Roche and I send each other ridiculous. All right, I want to tell everybody about our friends over at Classic Roofing. If you are a homeowner or a business owner and you're looking for a reliable roofer right here in the Midlands, you can trust our guys over at Classic Roofing. ClassicRoofingSC.com, or give them a call, 803-590-7870. You know, taking good care of your roof, it can be a challenge. You don't have to go at it alone. Our guys, Joe Reeder, Max Sawyer over at Classic Roofing can give you a free estimate. They are a GAF certified roofer. Only about 7% nationwide are GAF certified. Roof inspections, roof installations, roof replacements, roof repairs. They can come out, take a look at what's going on, make recommendations for you. If you need repairs, if you need a new roof, they can do it for you. ClassicRoofingSC.com, or again, give them a call, 803-590-7870.
Welcome back in. It is the Game Clock Club Hour. Tyler Head and Chris Clark along with you on this Tuesday, presented as always by Krantz Heating and Cooling. Let's take a look at the AP Top 25. Of course, it comes out at the conclusion of every college football weekend, and no real movement up front as 2 of the 4 teams were on byes with Georgia and Alabama at 2 and 4. Texas remains number 1 after their victory this past weekend with Arch Manning getting his first career start. Ohio State has not played anybody this year. I've seen their highlights. I know nothing about how good they are because they have not been tested by anybody.
I have a take.
Okay.
It would qualify as probably a hot take, not a scorcher. I don't know if they are number 3 in the country. I have watched a little bit. I watched their game against Akron because we were trying to scout the Zips a little bit.
Sure.
Now you may say, Chris, you're an idiot. They won that game like, what was it, 52 to 6?
Yep.
So close to what South Carolina did. No transitive property. There's several teams that really haven't been like Ole Miss hasn't really been tested. Wake Forest,
no. Georgia Southern, Furman,
Missouri. They got they played BC and got tested. They played Vandy and got tested. First couple of weeks they had not. We can say they've been a little tested.
Sure.
And you see what happened to them. They moved down 4 spots.
Yep.
They're now number 11. Tennessee, because they beat Oklahoma on the road, moved up a spot. It's probably fair.
Yeah.
Ole Miss drops a spot. And really, when you're talking about teams in the top 5, top 10, I'm kind of splitting hairs. I'm not saying Ohio State is, should be number 20 or anything. I just, from watching them, I've got some questions. That's all I'm saying. I look at them. I don't know if they're as good as Texas, Georgia, Bama, Tennessee, Ole Miss, like schools like that. Will be kind of interesting. I mean, their next test, Tyler, their only test so far, if you could say, is, Michigan State. Do you qualify that as a test?
I don't.
A little bit more than some of these
We'll see how good their offense is against Iowa in a couple weeks. They shouldn't have any problem winning that game because Iowa's offense still isn't crazy good themselves. But that road trip to Eugene is going to tell us everything we need to know about Ohio State and if they are as legit as they think they are. Certainly very talented, obviously killed it in the transfer portal. Quinshon Judkins, tons of guys on offense and defense. Will Howard coming over from Kansas State at quarterback. But again, when you look at these games against Akron, Western Michigan, and Marshall, they won the game. They won them the way they're supposed to win them. Yeah, and have been relatively under the radar for the first 4 weeks of the season, just because those aren't games that people typically pay attention to. And it's funny because their schedule always sets up this way. Most Big Ten teams do this, where they play their 3 non-cons first and get them out of the way, and then just play the onslaught of the Big 12 or Big Ten schedule down the pipe. So we're going to learn a lot about them here soon.
Well, you look at that schedule, and they do play some really good teams on it in the future. At Oregon in a couple weeks, as you said. They also have to go to Penn State, and they do have Michigan at home.
Yep.
You get past those, you're coasting into the Big Ten championship, and obviously if you do that, you're playoff bound. So it kind of looks silly and sounds silly for me to say that. I don't know how good they are. They've won 52-6, 56-0, and 49-14. And Marshall's not a bad team. They're not bad, although Marshall lost to Virginia Tech, right? I
believe so.
So Virginia Tech not very good. So we'll see. My point is, after seeing a little bit of them, I'm not quite sold. Now, they do have tons of talent, particularly, like you said, on offense. That there will be some tests coming up. Even, maybe Nebraska's a little sneaky kind of test. They get them at home.
The quality of that game got dinged a little bit with Nebraska losing to Illinois this past weekend because so many people, and we talked about it as well, that Nebraska could be 6-7-0 going into that game, and obviously blew it against a very good Illinois team, which people are maybe overlooking. They're number 19, always a team that plays really good defense. I think Luke Altmaier is one of the more underrated quarterbacks in college football. I'm not saying they're going to be in the Big Ten championship game, but they might make some noise as the season rolls along to maybe be a team flirting with one of those at-large spots.
Yeah, I was looking through the Big Ten, actually, and tell you a team who's not flirting with the playoff is Purdue. Woo. They look pretty poor so far.
Well, when you're the follow up to Notre Dame losing to NIU and they
66-7.
yeah, that's
Then they lost to Oregon State. You know, they got to go play. Well, they get Nebraska at home, but then they got to go at Wisconsin, at Illinois. They play Oregon. They've got at Ohio State. They got Penn State. Might not go too well for the Boilermakers. Hey, I was looking, Tyler. I wanted to get your thoughts on this real quick.
okay.
So looking over the AP Top 25, which I've completely commandeered this segment and taken it in a different direction. I'm sorry. Maybe we can do some the next hour.
It's okay.
You know, Oklahoma is number 21. They dropped 6 spots. They're 3-1. They're making a change at quarterback, and I'm fascinated by this. Not just because it's a major SEC program making a change at quarterback. We've seen that some. Auburn's doing it, but you know they kind of ran off Dylan Gabriel this offseason so that they could keep Jackson Arnold, who they felt like was the future, happy. And now they have benched Jackson Arnold.
Right.
And they're going to Michael Hawkins. Now, Michael Hawkins, he may turn out to be outstanding.
He looked better than Arnold did against Tennessee last week. Now, they didn't have any tape on him, but
He's a dynamic player. He might end up being really good, and then you go, okay. But then you go watch Oregon play, and you see Dylan Gabriel, and you're like, seems like they could use him.
definitely so. You got to be careful. I get it. Arnold was big-time recruit, high hopes for him and all that kind of stuff, but there is a difference between, you know, having all the accolades coming out of high school and being somebody like Gabriel that's played 9 years of college football and proven himself on the field every single year. I think there might be a lot of folks out there, Norman, that may be regretting that a little bit right now.
Well, I also take it in the direction of maybe we'll get this into this next hour Gamecock Central takeover. Hugh Freeze.
Yep.
Big yikes. You know,
He didn't have a quarterback at all.
And I honestly don't know the ins and outs, but, you know, I'm not saying, you know, it's easy to say, well, they wish they had Robbie Ashford right now. I mean, I think probably so. I don't honestly know the ins and outs of what happened there to precipitate Robbie leaving. But, I mean, we got to find a quarterback that won't throw it to the other team. He's saying you're playing musical chairs. You got your quarterbacks kind of talking smack and throwing 3 picks in the first half. You didn't go in the portal this offseason to get a quarterback.
Your former quarterback's calling you out on Twitter.
Yeah. And then you're saying that you would have beaten Arkansas if you played them 9 other times.
I don't know about that
Different,
one, Hugh.
I wrote this morning. Different kind of freeze warning that needs to be issued now, I think.
That's a good one. You should be proud of that.
Thank you.
That'll do
Appreciate
it for the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Heating and Cooling. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs coming up next on your Tuesday here on the game.
Great timing to tell everybody about our friends over at Krantz Cooling and Heating. They were actually out at my home yesterday, guys, and was really impressed by the service I got from their team. Long story short, some folks who had done some unrelated work at our home had messed something up. They messed up one of our drains on our HVAC system. They decided to put concrete over it. Not a great idea. Don't recommend it. And so the guys at Krantz were able to quickly come out, diagnose exactly what happened. They got it nice and fixed up for me very quickly within an hour. Honestly, I was the biggest holdup because I was here at the station. They got me fixed up. 803-672-3224. They can do the same for you. KrantzCooling.com. That's Krantz with a K, Cooling with a K. Any HVAC repairs, if you need a new system, they can take a look at it for you. Shout out to Justin Krantz, General Manager since 1983. Locally owned and operated, Krantz Cooling.
11 o'clock on your Tuesday morning. Welcome in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head, Wes Mitchell, Chris Clark along with you here, navigating through the bye week. Of course, Carolina off this weekend, back in action next weekend, welcoming Ole Miss into town. As we learned yesterday, 3:30 kick. I know there's a lot of hope and optimism this one might end up being a night game, but mid-afternoon, you'll get a little, like the fourth quarter will be kind of at night, but not what everybody was hoping for, I guess.
Yeah, I thought we were going night game. It's better than noon.
Yeah, better than noon. Though, I mean, the noon atmosphere for LSU is great, but I think 3:30 will allow people to get sauced up enough over the course of the morning and early afternoon to be nice and rowdy to boo a certain former player every time he takes the field.
Well, will it be just limited to him?
I won't be just limited to him, but it'll be the loudest for him.
Yeah. Yeah. Ole Miss got a little test this week, right?
Finally. Learn something about him.
I mean, where's that game?
It's in Oxford.
Yeah, of course it is.
Yeah.
Played all their. I don't think they leave Oxford.
They went to Winston.
home games
They went to
except for the one in
Winston
South
Salem for the tough test that is the Demon Deacons on the CW. But other than that,
I have a buddy back home in Anderson, and his dad actually used to play for Clemson, and his dad would call Wake Forest Stadium the Death Bowl because it was kind of like Vandy. Like you would get there's 5 people there. I mean, Wake has a better environment, I guess, than Vandy. I shouldn't say that. Tyler's ish.
it's debatable.
Yeah,
They got the slow mesh.
they do
pretty
have.
cool.
I feel like they've slowed it down. I was watching one of their games the other night. I feel like it's even slower this year.
Yeah, it's pretty neat.
It didn't work very well.
Did I
It's
hear?
Ole Miss.
Did I hear a little bit of Hugh Freeze talk?
Yes. Do you have thoughts?
Yeah.
I mean,
I loved your post on the Insiders Forum.
things are going great in Auburn.
Things are going well.
I just didn't know. I mean, I didn't think this thing was going to fall off the rails this quickly. And maybe it hasn't. Maybe it won't. But I think when you hire Hugh Freeze, you know at some point it's going to go off the rails, but you think you're probably going to win some games in between.
Yep.
And Auburn is one of those places where I think they've accepted, at least deep down in their hearts, okay, we're not going to just consistently win every year. Like Auburn's one of those programs that when you don't expect anything from them, they jump up there and just randomly compete for like a national title. Like they have proved
Their good years are really, really good.
Yeah, you can win a title there, as has been proven. But then also, it is just going to be an absolute you-know-what show behind the scenes. And it really felt like a great match, just based on what we know about Auburn and what we know about Hugh Freeze's past, right? And we're already at the blaming players. Say what you want about Ole Miss coming in next week and, Lane Kiffin and all that, but my man at a podium is undefeated. And so Kiffin already throwing shade at Hugh Freeze without even mentioning his name.
Do you want to hear the shade for those that may not have heard it?
I've heard it, but if anyone else wants to hear it.
Terry, let's hit cut number 2. This is Lane Kiffin taking his shot at Auburn when talking about his quarterbacks.
Is that relationship. I just think from on the field, there's a trust level there of, we spend a lot of time with him and then let him play too on Saturdays. And I just think that, like you said, it started one way. I think that, you build that, especially for a guy that we didn't really recruit out of high school, any of that, didn't have a previous relationship. And I think it pays off, when you have relationships and the quarterbacks trust you too, and you go back to Matt Corral when he threw 6 interceptions, and before I even got to the media, sitting down with him, telling him, we got to do a better job calling plays. I got to coach better, and don't worry, we got your back. And so I think that goes a long ways, and goes a long ways with kids in recruiting, of knowing what they're going to get when they get here from relationship, and that they can trust us to have their back.
Joey Freshwater never misses an opportunity, does he?
Well, the beauty of it is he didn't mention Auburn by name. He didn't mention
Didn't have to.
Hugh Freeze by name. Like that's the beauty of his ability to hit the mic and say something without actually even saying it. And I gotta say, I do appreciate that. And you know, I think, guys, this whole thing with Freeze is partially of his own doing, because it didn't really seem like they made a priority to go out and find a portal quarterback. And by the way, Arkansas already has gotten back in with a tweet this morning that they sent out at 9 a.m. Also, shot of a interception saying, you know, it was a pick 9 out of 9 times. I mean, I don't know. I just, if you're Hugh Freeze, what is your end game of throwing your players directly under the bus?
I don't know. I think from what we know about Freeze, and I know some people that love him and did the whole, you know, he's a changed man thing. You know, maybe so. I don't know. I'm just going off of what he's saying about a football game. And some of his past, there's some kind of, you know, there's some ego there, I think. And so when he goes on the radio and in the post-game press conference, and, you know, he did say a couple things in the post-game press conference. That, we got to do a better job, things like that. But he kind of doubled down on it on the radio show of throwing the players under the bus, really. I mean, that was the impression that everybody got. I thought the worst comment was the whole, we beat Arkansas 9 out of... I love Sam Pittman, hope they win all their games. We beat them. Like, what evidence do you have for that? There's nothing... I mean, I didn't see... you. I mean, yeah, there was some picks and stuff, but what evidence do you have for even saying that?
Well, what does that even say about your coaching and your staff?
Yeah, that means you screwed it up.
A guaranteed win and you lost by 10.
Yeah, but I don't see why it was a guaranteed win. I mean, you know, no disrespect. I mean, you just...
No disrespect, but I'm going to disrespect you. Classic case.
Respectfully.
With respect. The only thing that I can think of is that, like, is he making some... You know, they're recruiting the Deuce Knight kid, the Notre Dame commit. Is he sending him that clip? Hey, Deuce, look, man, I mean, I'm calling all these great plays. I'm a genius. My quarterbacks can't make the throw. You can make it here. I mean, to me, that's a dangerous game, too. I'm not saying that's it. That's all I can come up with. You know? And you compare that to how other schools have handled the quarterback situation. Oklahoma, they're making a quarterback change. Now, I think they probably mismanaged that in the offseason. Dylan Gabriel's doing pretty well for Oregon. You ran him off so you could kind of protect Jackson Arnold. Now he's on the bench. But once that decision's made, you got to do what's best for the team. Haven't seen any viral clips of Brent Venables throwing Jackson Arnold under the bus, right? Compare it with South Carolina. Different situation. You haven't had to play musical chairs, but you got Robbie Ashford, who I think there's at least a segment of people in Auburn right now who are like, geez, I kind of might
like to have him back.
Want to have him. You know, when Lenoris Sellers went through some struggles in game 1, when Robbie Ashford came in the second half of the LSU game, didn't have a great game, Shane Beamer's not throwing his guys under the bus. You know, so I think this is something that a lot of schools, we saw Arkansas pounce on it on social. We saw Kiffin pounce on it. I think this is something that, you know, other people are going to pounce on too, especially in recruiting.
Well, I think this is a rare instance for Hugh Freeze to just not have a quarterback at all. I mean, yeah, he maybe didn't have the greatest quarterbacks in the world when he was at Ole Miss. I mean, Chad Kelly and Bill Bolas, perfectly fine quarterbacks. And what was it Malik Willis that he had when he was at Liberty as well? Like, solid quarterback. But now he just doesn't have any options. Peyton Thorne, you know, was what he was last year, didn't get any better in the offseason. And now you got Hank Brown, who went out there and threw, 4 interceptions himself on Saturday. So he didn't really have anywhere to turn. And I just think he's never been in this kind of situation in his coaching career. It's like he doesn't know what to do.
Well, I think his true colors are kind of showing through a little bit, if you ask me. If I'm Deuce Knight, though, I don't know, man. I've interviewed Deuce a couple times. South Carolina was in on him very early in the process. Seems to be, first of all, great player. And, I mean, yeah, he'd probably go tear it up in that offense, to be honest. But I don't know if that's where I want to. If I was Deuce Knight, I'd go to Ole Miss, personally.
Yeah.
I think he would destroy it in that offense. But I feel like the word is out on Hugh Freeze. I don't know if I was a quarterback if I would trust it. That's just me.
Well, I mean the whole team, you know? I mean the team sees those things. And you look at the rest of the season, had a losing season last year, and you could say it's year one. And Hugh Freeze was doing the whole, wait till I get my guys in here type of thing. I don't even know if he said that publicly. I'm sure he said some version of it. But, they started out high. Remember the beginning of the season? I wrote about this a little bit this morning. Freeze warning. They're hot, and they did. They've got a really good recruiting class going. Yeah. We're going to recruit a top 5 class. We just beat, who'd they open with? New Mexico State. They played New Mexico. Whoever, Arkansas, Alabama A&M.
That's right. That's right.
We beat them 73-3. Freeze warning is in effect. Well, different kind now. Different kind of freeze warning. It's gone. It's gone. That's why you can't put too much stock into week one. It's gone the opposite direction. You go look at their schedule. I see some more losses on that thing. Even if they would beat some of these teams they play 9 out of 10 times or whatever, I think they're going to take some losses in real life.
Yeah, and this is the year they have to go to Georgia and to Alabama. Also going on the road to Missouri, A&M at home, Oklahoma at home. Yeah, Vanderbilt, you never know how tough that's going to be now. Yeah, things not looking too cheery on the Plains this year.
You calling a Vandy upset? Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, they can take Missouri to the limit. I don't see why they can't beat Auburn.
Yeah, I'm not convinced Missouri is what we thought they were. Now, they did start slow last year, too.
True.
And by the end, are rolling to, the best season they've had in a long
Wes
time.
is calling a Gamecock upset over Missouri.
Chris, that's a you thing.
Will that be a must-win game? Go ahead and put that out there.
No such thing.
No such thing. All right, we'll dive back into the Gamecocks, including one that ended up on Charles Power's top freshman of the week after his performance this past weekend. It's coming up next. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here on the game.
All right, guys. I know you might have a signed print at your house that maybe is just sitting there trying to figure out what to do with it, maybe a signed poster. How about take it to the next level and put it on the wall in the man cave by calling our friends over at Goldline Framing, 803-739-1337. They want to take care of any and all of your custom framing needs, from diplomas, original artwork, canvases, jerseys, flags, like I said, signed prints or posters. Owner Kendall Walsh, manager Joni James, they're going to take great care of you over at 511 12th Street, West Columbia. In store, they got an art gallery, home decor, furniture, and other gift items. Tyler bought him a hat. Great hat. 803-739-1337. Open Tuesday to Friday, 10 a.m. to 5:30 p.m., and then Saturday, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Give them a follow on Instagram as well, at Goldline Framing SC. Again, that phone number, 803-739-1337.
Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head, Wes Mitchell, Chris Clark along with you on this Tuesday. Appreciate everybody checking us out on the Game TV. Sponsored by our friends over at Shepherd's Glass and powered by Integrated Media. Also checking us out on the 107.5 The Game app, which you can download on the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store. Coming away from every weekend, Charles Power of On3 does his true freshman standouts of the week. And this past weekend, Mazeo Bennett earned one of the spots in that list for his 5 catches and 71 yards with a touchdown against Akron. As we talked about, of course, no Jared Brown this past weekend. Mazeo Bennett is somebody that has continued to impress week after week and is definitely finding his role in this offense, even only being a true freshman.
Yeah, second time that South Carolina's had somebody on that list in, I guess, 4 weeks. You had Dylan Stewart on there week 1 for his performance. He was actually the top freshman in the country, according to On3 for that week, and now Mazeo with his big performance this week. And, man, he's just so good. And I think you look at someone who, just the way he carries himself, does not act like a freshman, the way Chris has mentioned, the way he runs routes, not like a freshman. I went back and looked at that play. I don't even know if that route's supposed to be open. Like they're dropping everybody back into like a cover 4 defense. A lot of times, like those 2 safeties are going to be able to clamp down on that route. And he just runs such a perfect route and had some nuance with it, with the way he sort of got the, I guess that would be the front side safety, kind of put him on his heels and then broke to the middle of the field on that post. And it was such a perfect route and such a perfect throw. They were still able to hit it against a coverage that I really don't think it was supposed to be open. So that was impressive, man. And he's only going to get better. But certainly I think in terms of development, he's already one of the more developed freshman receivers that South Carolina's probably ever had, honestly.
He gave that safety a little, just a subtle little move inside that kind of moved him or kept him in the same spot instead of playing over the top in that coverage, which he should have done. It kind of froze that safety, so it opened up enough room. And then Robbie, delivered a really good ball. He's just got a really good feel for the game. That's, I think, the best way you could put it. With receivers, a lot of times we look at, is this guy big and fast? And sure, that's great, but we've all talked a lot about how in the NFL, you got a lot of if you have a big receiver who can run, that's almost an outlier now. It's smaller guys now. A lot of times we lose sight when we're looking at physical traits on a couple things that you must do as a receiver, and that is be able to run routes and catch the football, And so is Mazeo Bennett 6'2"? No. Is he the fastest receiver on the team in terms of, going out there and running a 40, running straight line down the field? Absolutely not. But he is probably, I would say, maybe the most advanced guy in terms of just how he can run his routes, how he can get open. And so when you're playing against, a Kentucky who plays zone, or I think he's going to be a guy who's just so good in zone coverage because he has got a great feel of where to sit down, where to give his quarterback really good targets against zone defense. So I think he'll continue getting better, but he's already shown some really good things, 11 catches this season, some big touchdowns. Good start for Mazeo Bennett.
And that's the exciting thing is, again, he's 4 games into his college career as a true freshman. Like, there's a lot of room to grow, a lot of room to continue to get better, hopefully right alongside, Lenore Sellers, a quarterback over the next couple of years on what can hopefully turn out to be maybe one of the best wide receiver quarterback combos in the SEC as time goes along, because it's certainly looking like it's off to a really good start.
Well, I think it's easy to, sometimes people kind of get behind the idea of, hey, recruiting does not matter. And I think Mazeo, who is someone who has been on the recruiting radar out of high school for a number of years, had major offers. Obviously South Carolina offered him very early. They were the first major offer, but, you had Florida State involved. Tennessee not only prioritized him, but had him committed at one point. And, you're sitting there saying, golly, you can't lose this guy to an out-of-state and an SEC program if you're South Carolina, especially as much early interest that they had from Mazio and just how long they had a relationship there with Mazio. So that would have been a really, really tough beat, I think, if he had gone to Tennessee, knowing he's right down the road in Greenville, and knowing how much, if you're Carolina, you needed high school wide receivers. Like, you needed guys who could come in and play without having to just continue to go the transfer portal route, which is something they've had to do at wide receiver. To me, that's no way to live. Like, you can go the portal route to supplement, but you do need to have at least a base of talent from the high school ranks. And so Mazio gives you that huge recruiting win for Carolina, flipping him from Tennessee. And we're seeing that right off the bat. And, you know, I think he's a guy, like y'all said, he's only going to get better. And, you know, just you look at his competitive nature as well. He's one of those guys. And I remember Muschamp used to say this about, like, a J.C. Horn. Like, you almost maybe it was about J.C. I can't remember if it was about J.C. or it was one of those DBs. He said, you know, you'd rather have to sort of slow them down as opposed to have to start up their competitive juices, basically. And Mazio's almost one of those guys, from what we've heard in practice. Like, you almost have to be like, all right, man, I understand you want to compete for every single rep, but this is practice. Like, don't be so hard on yourself, because he is a perfectionist, which 9 out of 10 times is a good thing. But there is it can get to maybe too big of a level. And so for him, though, he's sort of rode that competitive nature into the spot he's in right now.
Yeah, and you know, and in addition to just being a good prospect, like, this is the kind of guy you want in the program. I mean, he's an in-state guy. He represents you very well, comes from a great family, has family ties to South Carolina. Like, this is your ideal prospect. And South Carolina, you know, there was a bump in the road, obviously, with him committing to Tennessee, but you did get him here. I think that's something you want to continue. You look, guys, in the 2026 class, there's a lot of receiver targets on the board. A lot of them from Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina. A couple guys right here in Columbia from Irmo, Donovan Murph, Jordan Gidron from Ridgeview. A couple guys who are also 4-star type prospects. And I think, honestly, part of the recruiting pitch to those guys is, you know, look at Mazio Bennett. He could have gone to a bunch of other schools. He was committed to Tennessee, decided to stay here. And I think that's what they're selling. And you're right, Wes. They do have to continue to build, you know, high school recruiting at the receiver position is something that, quite frankly, and Shane Beamer said this, wasn't good enough, you know, over the past couple cycles. So it's an area you need to get better in. Mazio was a good start. A few guys coming up in the next, you know, class or two would cap that off, I think.
Few of those guys were on campus this past weekend as well. We'll recap that and also look ahead to what is coming down the pipe with the 2025 and 2026 class as well. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on your Tuesday here on the game.
Another one of our great partners here on the game, on the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, is Integrated Media. Michael and Nathan are great guys. You want to give Michael a call, probably talk some Gamecocks with you, but he can also talk about how he can make your home or business into a smart home or business. Give him a call, 803-948-8327. If you're wondering what a smart home is, well, that's Integrated Media's way of taking your home and then making sure that you can control your lights, your thermostat, your sound systems, TVs, security cameras, and alarms, all from the touch of a button, whether you're at home, maybe you're downstairs and say, hey, before I go up for the night, let's cut the AC back a couple degrees. Maybe you're away from home. You want to be able to control that stuff. Check out your security and cameras. Make sure everything's secure. Again, control your thermostats, your lighting, everything. integratedmediainc.com, or give them a call, 803-948-8327. That's Integrated Media.
Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs, Tyler Head, West Mitchell. Chris Clark along with you on this Tuesday. Busy week here on the game. Coming up Friday, halftime show and the postgame show. Going to be broadcasting live from the Ultimate Long Drive World Championships at Party 3209 Charleston Highway out in West Columbia. So looking forward to that coming up on Friday. This past weekend, of course, another home game. Opportunity to bring in a lot of recruits, and I wanted to ask you guys this to start off, because the dynamic between the LSU game and the Akron game is pretty interesting, where, you know, they were talking about having to turn recruits away the week before because so many wanted to be on campus for that big game atmosphere, college game day, and all that kind of stuff. What is the difference when it comes to recruiting weekend when you have a huge matchup like LSU compared to like this past weekend against a Group of 5 team where, again, Carolina should go out there and handle their business like they did?
Yeah, you know, I think, like anything, there's pros and cons to either one. Like, you can have a very successful recruiting weekend for an Akron game just as much as you could for an LSU game, in my opinion. And, you know, a lot of times there are going to be logistic, not issues, but just logistic things you have to be aware of going into an LSU game. That's a game, especially that week, with game day being in town, with it being a noon kickoff. That's something Beamer referenced. Hey, guys, if you want to come to this game as a recruit, you better get here early. But I'm sure there's probably some top recruit who got caught in traffic and is probably calling, recruiting staff and saying, hey, I can't get to the game. And then, you're sitting there having to go, well, wow, this is a high priority target for us. But what are you going to do? You can't fly them over the traffic. And so it's a situation where sometimes, depending on, every recruit is different. Depending on where I am within that recruitment, sometimes I'd almost prefer, not that you're going to take Akron lightly as a staff, but let's be honest. Akron, night game, there's maybe a little bit more time to devote, and your time is not split among, what was that number Beamer gave of guys with offers that were in for LSU? Was it 52?
I wanted to say 52 or 53. Yeah, it's in the 50s for sure.
Almost a full NFL team worth of guys that were, in with South Carolina offers. So even just from that, your time with each one is going to be a little bit shorter. So Akron week, it sounds like was very successful for South Carolina as well. The LSU one is just more about let prospects see what you're all about. And because of game day, because it was one of the bigger games that week, you're going to have more guys come in who maybe you're just like, oh, I want to see the best game this. Like if I was a recruit, I'd be like, well, I'm going to go to Alabama, Georgia this coming week. I'm going to go to, if I'm a local guy, I'm going to go to South Carolina, Ole Miss the week after. When's Clemson's big game? Do they play big games? But I'm going to go to where the buzz is, And so I think for Carolina to be able to play with LSU, play a great game, great atmosphere, that's what you're looking for that first one. With an Akron game, it's more like, all right, there's going to be less guys here, but maybe I can spend a little bit more time with each prospect. And night games are just way easier to get to. If you're think if you're playing on a Friday night and you're an out-of-state prospect, you're trying to play on a Friday night, then get to Columbia for a noon kickoff with game day in town, logistically, that's just tough. So night games, and even, 3:30 is a lot easier entry. 3:30 may be the easiest trip for a prospect in terms of being able to sleep in a little bit on Saturday, but not getting home at 4 a.m., that night. And so I think, again, pros and cons to all these. Now, Ole Miss, I expect another massive, massive list of prospects.
Yeah, that is going to be, it's still early. I've already had some people ask, Ole Miss visitor list. We knew that the LSU game for this staff was shaping up to be a big one. I think it was, before the season even started, we knew that was one that they were eyeing as a big game. It was your first conference game at home. That was a big one. But this one should be big too. Still building out that list, obviously, because up until yesterday we didn't even have the game time. You knew the general window. You knew it wasn't going to be a noon kickoff. But now they have it. They're working hard to build out that list. We've heard from some prospects already that are planning on returning for that game. It should be appointment viewing, not only for SEC fans, Carolina, Ole Miss, people across the country. I think a lot of eyes going to be on that game, but also for prospects too. So, I don't know if it'll beat that 50-something number, Wes, but it might be pretty close. Might beat it.
It might be just
be interesting.
Just in terms of access, just being able to get to town and get parked and all those things. Trying to think, what other big games do we even have that week? As far as it's mostly Southeast teams that you're competing against.
Yeah,
the night game is Tennessee, Arkansas.
I know Georgia Auburn's that weekend. You got Clemson and Florida State down in Tallahassee.
Missouri A&M. Auburn, Georgia. You've got
who's Tennessee got?
Arkansas.
Okay. That got prime time, I think. Which is a slot I thought
says TBD, but
Carolina Ole Miss would have.
UCF and Florida.
Hey, if that goes a certain way.
It's a bad matchup for Florida. They cannot stop the run, and UCF.
If that goes a certain way.
They run the ball.
Run the ball. Will y'all sit around and watch Ole Miss Kentucky this week?
100%.
Oh, yeah. Totally.
What time's that one?
Noon.
You know, nooner.
Nooner
Okay.
on ESPN, I believe.
Okay.
So you can start the day off with that.
What's the line on that game?
Good question.
Anybody know?
Hold on. Have that answer for you in a second.
Oh,
It is in Oxford.
yes. It's in Oxford.
Guess the line.
Yeah.
In Oxford, nooner. Let me get Ole Miss by 15.
Wes,
I was going to say Ole Miss 16.
17 and a half.
Ah,
It's about, I mean, yeah,
decent guesses.
it's about right,
What do you
I
think, Tyler? What would you have?
Well, I mean,
Can they cover?
I think so.
This will be,
I mean, we're finally going to learn about them.
yeah, I was going to say, this will be by a good margin their first actual test, particularly when you think about Kentucky's defense.
Mm-hmm.
You know, against, I mean, they haven't played, like Wake Forest presents you some problems defensively with what they do on offense because it's weird at times. But I don't know. I mean, is Wake Forest a quote unquote good football team? I don't really think so. So this will be an actual test. I mean, Wake lost to Virginia by 1 and lost to Ole Miss by 34. So, you know, they've only played 3 games. We don't really know, but that's not a great test. This is the first one that they've actually had. You know, if they look a little shaky offensively against a pretty good Kentucky defense, you know, maybe that changed some folks' opinions on it just a little bit.
Yeah, definitely so. And this game is in Oxford, you know, as opposed to being in Lexington, where, again, Georgia narrowly escaped a couple weeks ago. But, yeah, I mean, if this one's tight, I wouldn't be shocked by it. Does that mean that, you know, Ole Miss isn't a great team? No, not necessarily. Just their first test of the year, 5 weeks into the season, so they may have a little bit of rust to knock off.
Yeah. I think they're pretty dang good. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to go undefeated with this schedule. And, you know, it will get more difficult, obviously, but I think they're a playoff team. So I am looking forward to having a little bit to actually chew on from this game because, I mean, you can go back. I've actually watched quite a bit of them so far, despite it just being against awful teams. And
Don't disrespect Georgia Southern like that.
sorry. But you went to Georgia State, right?
I did.
So I thought you would be okay with me disrespecting Georgia Southern.
I went to Georgia State without going to Georgia State. It's a long story.
Oh. You got a fake diploma?
No.
Is that what you're saying?
No, I went to a community college that Georgia State bought out right before I graduated. So I got to graduate with Georgia State in the Georgia Dome like a month before they tore it down. So I have a degree from Georgia State without actually going to Georgia State.
Have you ever been to Georgia? Like, have you ever stepped foot?
Not on the campus, no.
So you entered the portal without
I entered the portal without entering the portal.
without knowing.
Yeah, like the last
How about that?
last semester I was there, they changed all the signage to Georgia State and Panthers, and they gave us free season tickets at graduation for the following year. That first year that they played at Turner Field. Now,
What year
now
was
Center
that?
Park
You
Stadium.
didn't go?
Well, that's the first year I went to Georgia. I was like, I think I'll go to the Georgia games instead.
Little.
But yes, they do give out free season tickets at graduation.
How about that?
That's a pretty cool.
Yeah,
Good
it's
perk.
neat.
Were you excited when Georgia State beat Vandy the other night?
I
on
thought
the
that was
last minute?
cool. Oh,
I thought it was
alma mater pride. I have a Georgia State T-shirt somewhere that says alumni. I wear it ironically.
Have you ever told the story on air before?
Not on air.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm an alumni without
Breaking
being an
news.
alumni.
It's a good bye-week story, I feel like.
It's an associate's degree, so it's something.
Pretty cool.
We'll wrap up the Gamecock Central Takeover, a little bit more recruiting on who was on campus this past weekend and looking at the 2025 class as well. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here on the game. Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West, Mitchell, Chris Clark. We're watching SEC in 60.
Have y'all watched this before?
The SEC Network. They are actively recruiting ULM's roster after watching how they played against A&M.
No.
They got some dudes.
Okay.
Bowling Green.
First of all,
Bowling Green, excuse me. Sorry.
First of all, I plead the fifth. Second of all, that's Bowling Green.
Yeah. The ULM Texas highlights were a minute ago. Bowling Green, excuse me.
I don't think it. ULM did not put up as much.
No,
of a
they
fight.
did not.
Yeah.
It was not a close game. But Bowling Green, give them credit. They made a game out of it.
Okay, that was the one, Wes.
Okay.
The-
I looked at the wrong field goal. Y'all saw the controversial field goal.
Yeah.
Many people were saying that he missed it,
it
and
kind
I
of looked
thought
like
it
he
was
did.
the earlier one that looked no good.
Are we going to put the GPS in the football soon? Like,
How have we not up to this point?
isn't that coming to the NFL?
They tried it in the preseason.
I think they said that it might be implemented next year.
Yeah, they typically try things out in the preseason before putting it in full go. So maybe next year, but it's crazy that it's 2024 and we're just now getting to that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm with you. By the way, guys, the SEC in 60 on SEC Network is a pretty just thorough but quick breakdown of each game. Like, if you want to see what happened in a game, but in a very short period of time, this is the way to do it. But yeah, Bowling Green, man, they are solid. They gave A&M everything they wanted and more. I think you start to look at this South Carolina schedule. Chris, you had some thoughts on the schedule in your piece today?
I did.
You know how before the season we talked about, all right, the schedule looks daunting.
Mm-hmm.
But as you get into it, there's always a couple of teams that are better than we expect, and there's always a couple of teams that you're just like, it just hasn't come together for them. And, I don't know if we still know. Like, some of these teams are going to improve as the year goes on. Some of the teams will go the wrong way, or maybe they have a major injury. But I do think you look at A&M being at home for Carolina, being a night game. That was a game I already kind of said, hey, that's winnable, but let's see which way Carolina goes and let's see which way A&M goes. Based on what we've seen from Carolina the last 3 weeks, I tend to think that that's a extremely winnable game. I've circled Oklahoma. They have quarterback issues, obviously. Most importantly, they have O-line issues. And anybody Carolina plays that you just circle, they have major O-line issues, I think you can almost say the Gamecocks have a shot to be in the game, even with it being on the road, because I think they should be able to dominate it up front. Now, Oklahoma, pretty good defense, I think. Mm-hmm. So then you look at Missouri, another team that comes here, a team that has really done well against South Carolina the last couple of years, a team that Carolina kind of owes one to, I think, and a team that started slow last year, like I said earlier, but has just not looked dominant at all this year. That one, on paper, you probably look at and say that Carolina can win it, too.
Did you read my piece, or we just have the same opinion again? Those are the three.
I did not read it.
So I had 3 categories. Well, first of all, thanks. I had tougher than envisioned before the season. Obviously, we've had 4 games now, so you throw out 4 because they've already happened. I had tougher than envisioned, about the same, and more winnable. So those are my 3. I put Oklahoma, A&M, and Missouri as I'm not saying South Carolina's favored.
We feel better
in
about
those
it
games, but you
than
feel
we did in July or August.
And right now, I would probably if I'm laying odds, you probably go Oklahoma -2 on the almost to pick them
because they're playing at home.
Because it's at home.
Yeah.
A&M, I favor South Carolina. Missouri, you probably still got to favor Missouri for now, not by a lot. Let's see where it is by the time it gets there. And I think all these games are more winnable than we thought. Tougher than envisioned before the season. I only had 1. I put Vandy. Little tougher.
Yeah.
But about the same. Ole Miss, Bama, Wofford, Clemson.
I think so. The Vandy thing is interesting because we look at how they played the first 2 weeks, obviously beating Virginia Tech, and that was a big deal. Lose to Georgia State, and then play the tight game against, Missouri. And I don't know if that's a case of, well, Vanderbilt's better than we think, or Missouri's not as good as we think. Or maybe it could be a little bit of both. And again, it's, the first month of the season, things can obviously change between now and when we play those teams. But I still don't have a great gauge on how good exactly either one of those teams are right now.
Yeah, I tend to think, Tyler, maybe a little bit of both in terms of that. And I think that's my go-to anytime with football. It's usually both things. But Vandy has definitely improved. But the question is it enough for it to matter, right? So Vandy, they're off this week. I was about to say they got Bama this week, but no, Bama has Georgia. That can't be possible. Their schedule is not maybe as daunting as some of the other SEC ones. They have Ball State built in. They do play Texas. Travel to Auburn. What if Vandy knocks off Auburn? How quickly...
I want to read the message boards the day after that.
How quickly warm does that seat get then? Trying to go back last year. Vandy played some somewhat tight games last year. Matter of fact, Carolina blew out Vandy. They did Vandy about worse than almost anybody in the league. Like, you look back, Vandy lost to Georgia 37-20, lost to Missouri 38-21, lost to Auburn 31-15. Like, these aren't what you would call barn burners, like super close games, but they're not straight up Vandy-style old-school blowouts either. So
right.
I think there were some signs that they were improving. I do think they're an improved football team. They've made a lot of changes in terms of bringing in new guys, both on their staff and on the roster. But, yeah, I agree. I think they're a more difficult game. If you're Carolina, though, you have to be Vandy. Like, that's always been if you're gonna reach your goals, you have to be Vandy. Period. End of story.
Yeah, because otherwise, you got to go get another upset, which is going to be difficult to do. You got to get the ones you got. They're in a decent spot now. We all said, hey, it would have been great, obviously, to be 4-0, but to split the two conference games that you did with Kentucky and LSU, decent outcome.
Yeah, I check bowl projections every week, and pretty much everyone has them in some form of bowl right now. So not only belief here in Columbia, belief elsewhere that Carolina is going to get back to the postseason in some form this year. That'll do it for today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. Halftime show, myself, Terry Ford, coming up next here on The Game.
All right, guys, before we get out of here, let us tell you about our friends over at Firehouse Subs, our presenting sponsor for every single episode of the Gamecock Central Takeover. And guess what? Maybe you want to try something new. They got something for you, the new Firehouse Captain's Club, featuring signature Captain Sorensen's hot sauce, the new Firehouse Hero Sauce, savory oven-roasted chicken, melted pepper jack, crushed red pepper flakes, lettuce, tomato, onions, perhaps the best part, crispy, smoky bacon. Be sure to check out the Captain's Club today at one of the 14 Midlands Firehouse Subs locations. Order ahead with the Rapid Rescue. That is by far the easiest way to order. Head on over to firehousesubs.com or download that app when you do the Rapid Rescue. Not only are they going to have that thing waiting for you on the shelf when you walk in, but also you're going to get points every single time you order from Firehouse Subs. Then you can trade those points in for free subs at a later date. Hit them up right now for lunch, Firehouse Subs.